Welcome, please welcome
to another episode of the Tools of the Trade podcast, your number one construction industry resource. Hear conversations with industry professionals to get the tools, stories, and advice that you need to set your career on fire. You're now streaming the Tools of the Trade podcast.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Netsurance Canada. Get instant online quotes for insurance and bonds, even from a cell phone. Guys, it really is that simple. Just head over to netsurance.ca. That's netsurance.ca for all of your insurance and bonding needs. What's up, guys? Thank you for tuning into another episode of Tools of the Trade. We are approaching the end of February here, and that caps off what I have been calling Residential Builders Month. It's been fun having three different contractors that specialize in three different things from three different areas of Canada so that you, the listener, can have broad insight and overview from the perspective of three different people. And that's not to say that we won't be having more residential companies on in the future, but it was just my attempt and experiment at batching some episodes together for easy access and to view three alternating opinions back to back. Today's guest is a residential home renovator and the co-founder of New Vision Projects, Brandon Smith. Brandon is a good friend of mine, and he is one of those guys that you can call and he'll pick up the phone when you're having a crisis in life or in business, and he's always there with some sound advice, and I appreciate the hell out of him. He is an extremely focused and calculated guy who trains Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and this episode actually starts off with a recent story of how he had to detain someone who broke into his house. It's absolutely crazy, and it's a true testament to Brandon's ability to act calm in a tough situation. We get into his journey as an entrepreneur, from working at McDonald's, and how he continued to push past barriers and go on to co-found his company. New Vision produces some unique home renovations with the highest standards of quality and craftsmanship, serving the Ladner, Delta, and Tsawwassen areas of BC. For this episode and more information about New Vision, check out toolspodcast.com/New Vision, and let's get started. So tell me about getting broken into. What the hell happened?
Oh, wow. All right. Yeah, you want to jump into that? It was actually a pretty wild story. So I'll preface the story. It was about 4 weeks prior to this happening. I had to put my dog down. He had lymphoma. He was about 12 and a half years old. I'd had him for well over a decade. I had him since he was about 8 or 9 months old. And he just became an incredible part of my life. And I had to put him down, which was pretty heartbreaking. In that time, I was also trying to find a new place to live. I was currently going to be moving out of my current space and my current home. And there was a property that came up that I jumped on pretty quickly. I made a pretty aggressive offer, said I was going to, I could close in 10 days. And I was right in the middle of negotiation that week. And it was a Saturday. I had made my final offer, and I was sitting. So Saturday night, I was sitting in my kitchen. I was trying to watch some television first. I was just anxiously pacing around, wondering if I was going to get the call back saying, okay, we have an accepted offer on the house. Anyways, couldn't concentrate on watching any TV as an entrepreneur and just myself anyways. I'm very ADD, so I have a hard time paying attention to anything anyways. And so I said to my girlfriend, all right, well, let's just make some dinner in the kitchen. We'll start walking around and listen to some music. And so I realized I had to e-transfer some money to a friend, and I looked down at my phone when I went to e-transfer some money, and my security question to him is, what is my dog's name? And I just looked at my girlfriend and I showed her that, and I just said, hey, I'm just not ready to change the name of this security question yet. And I had a bit of a moment, and as soon as I showed her my phone, there was a text message that popped up from a realtor that said accepted. And I went from just a real sort of low point where I was sad about my dog to a really happy point, because this was an incredible investment. And through negotiation, ended up making it work. So I gave her a big hug in the kitchen, and I was just in the middle of giving her a big hug, and we were celebrating. And guy walks into my front door. This is 8:30 at night. I don't keep my doors locked because I live in a town where I haven't had to do that for 25 years. And guy walks in through my front door, turns around, locks the front door, walks into my kitchen. I don't think that he saw us at first. So I start yelling at the guy, stop, do not come any closer. There was some profanity, but I won't curse too much on the podcast. I don't know who.
Oh, it's welcome. Get the fuck out of my house.
This guy walks in like, what the fuck are you doing? Who the fuck are you? Stop right there. And he throws his hands up and he says, there were gunshots across the street. My girlfriend is being held hostage in the house across the street. She's been missing for 10 days. I just found her. And they just started shooting at me. And so I'm like, okay, what the hell's going on? So there was new tenants about 4 months ago that moved in across the street from us, and we've had nothing but problems with them. Cops have been up and down the street 4 or 5 times, and they actually stopped by about 3 days prior to this guy walking into my house, just asking if we'd had any issues with the current tenants. And I said, well, yeah, as a matter of fact, we have. I've seen them out yelling and screaming in the middle of the night, hosing down their driveway at 3 a.m., just like weird shit, right? And had that not have happened, I did ask them, I said, so what's the scenario? And they said, well, they were just evicted from their home not too long ago, and now they're here and we're just keeping an eye on them. So they didn't give me any information. I don't know what the hell they're all about. So when this guy comes and he tells me there's been gunshots fired and his girlfriend is being held hostage in the house across the street, I'm thinking, all right, well, this is not too far from reality. So this guy, he tells me to call the cops, call the police. I need help. So naturally, I'm like, okay, stay right there. I get on the phone. I turn off the music that we're listening to on the phone because we're just making dinner in the kitchen. And I call the cops. I call 911. I get on the phone and I'm saying, please get here very quickly. There's been gunshots that have been fired across the street from my address. And there's a man in my house that's saying his girlfriend is being held hostage. Get here now. This guy tweaks out like he hears something. And then he starts panicking and drops to the ground. And he's telling me that he can hear the shooters out in my carport and outside my front door. And so I'm crouching down on the floor as well. And I'm thinking, like, all the lights are off out front of my house, so I can't see anything. But I'm on the phone with the police on the ground. He's on the ground in my hallway, crouched down, and we are hiding from these shooters that are out front of my house, that are surrounding my house. My girlfriend is in the kitchen as well. We're both down on the ground. I'm looking outside my backyard, thinking that, we are being surrounded. At the same time, I'm on the phone with the cops. And I'm telling them, I'm saying, yeah, get here quickly. The shooters we think that they might be outside the front door. And I'm thinking, okay, at this point, somebody's going to just blast through the front door looking for this guy. So I start giving the police information. They start asking me name, what's going on, just with information, but it's information they need. They want to keep me on the phone. So they asked me the name of the guy that's in the house. I don't know, man, what's your name? What's your name? So he gives me his name. We're whispering at this point because we don't want to make noise because we're not too far away from my front door. And so the cops say, can we speak with him? I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of weird, but they said we need to get some information what's going on across the street. So I tell him, I say, slowly come towards the kitchen. The police would like to speak with you. I'm going to pass you the phone. So he approaches me. I pass him the phone. That's fine. He takes off kind of down the hallway, giving his statement to the police. He's kind of frantic about it. So at that point, I get back into the kitchen. I tell my girlfriend, grab a knife. She grabs a knife. I grab a knife. She's standing just behind me, holding her knife. And I throw mine in my back pocket as I'm still trying to communicate with this guy. So I can hear him on the phone getting pretty riled up. he's giving the police information and he doesn't know why. He's like, why the hell are you asking me to spell my name? I've given you my name, just get here. So anyways, I understand that he's getting pretty aggravated. And there's a point there, whereas my girlfriend, she pointed out, she's like, I think he might be high. I think he might be high. And then I clued in and I started asking myself, is this guy maybe jacked up on meth, or, what's wrong? Maybe there is a mental issue there. And so I feel that he's getting quite aggravated, and I just say, hey, calm down. I'm going to take my phone. I will take care of it from here. I'll talk to the police, get back on the phone with the cops. He's now again crouching down in my hallway, hiding from who he thinks is in our carport. I'm talking to the police, and they want to keep me on the phone until the police get there. They say, okay, well, hey, does the man in your house, does he seem to be under the influence of drugs or alcohol? And I have the cops on speakerphone at this point, and I take him off speakerphone. I'm like, I don't want this guy to think that we are attacking him. So I take him off speakerphone, and I'm like, can you please repeat the question? They said, does the man in your house seem to be under the influence of drugs or alcohol? And I said, yes, quite possibly. So at this point, it went from helping him to trying to figure out whether or not this guy is actually fucked up, or whether or not there are people in my carport. So they tell me, okay, well, we think that there is nobody outside. Are you able to get outside and meet the cops? And I'm thinking that's a really weird thing to ask me when I'm telling you that I think that there's shooters outside. And they say, well, we feel that that's not the case. The cops are going to be there very quickly. Nobody else has repeated or heard and reported any gunshots. And normally if something like that is going to happen, we hear about it from multiple phone lines. So I tell my girlfriend to head upstairs, get onto the roof, take the knife, because if you knew our house, you can access the roof very easily from our bedroom upstairs. And at that point, it's a very quick and easy jump down onto the lawn. I'm thinking if somebody blasts through the house, then that would probably be the safest place for her to be at this point. So the cops are saying they're now a block and a half away. Can I get out? And at this point, this guy knows that I'm not on his side anymore. So he's between myself and my locked front door. And so at this point, I pull out my knife, get him back down into the hallway. I put my ear to the door. I'm still a little unsure of what's going on outside. I listen. I don't hear anything outside. I throw on the lights. I look out my front door through the little eye hole. I don't see anybody there. At the same time, I'm holding this guy up with my knife. And I make the decision, now that the cops are about a block and a half away, to open the door. I unlock my door, launch out into the carport. And at this point, I don't know if this guy is fucking crazy or if I'm walking into a hail of gunfire. But in my mind, with the analysis that I was quickly running in my head, I figured that odds were on my side. However, it was very nerve-wracking, and there was a point when he walked in front of me, and I pulled out a knife. If at this point he was going to attack, I had accepted the fact that I was probably going to end up killing a man, and I became okay with that. And there became a point when I opened up my front door, launched outside into what I was still unsure of what was out there. And I thought that was probably how my story ended, and I was going to die. And in that moment, I had accepted that as well. So I get outside. I don't hear anything. I don't see anybody, but there's a car in front of my driveway that's running. I can't see anybody. I can hear music playing from it and hear the engine running. So I'm hiding behind my truck now in my carport. I can hear my girlfriend. She's safe upstairs on the roof. And I'm keeping an eye on this guy that's kind of poking his head out the front door. I'm keeping an eye on the side of my house and kind of the hedges around the other side of my house, because I still don't know who's out there necessarily. And then at this point, one cop pulls up. He comes out and he approaches me. I show him I'm on the phone with dispatch. Yeah, he comes up. I'm just like, hey, I have a knife in my pocket. I'm just giving you a heads up. Behind him, 3 more cops pull up, approach me, we get this guy out of the house. We surround him, start talking to him, and he's saying, "Yeah, next door, my girlfriend is being held hostage in the house next door. Please, like, go find her." So two of the police sort of detain him, and two of the police go next door to look for any sign of hostages or gunshots or anything like that. Don't find a single thing. It turns out the guy is known to VPD, Vancouver Police Department, chronic meth head, known schizophrenic, and what was going on in his mind was reality for him. And in fact, none of what he was saying was actually happening, but he was 100% convincing because he was 100% convinced that this was actually happening. And I mean, that is, like, mental health issues at its peak.
No kidding.
And looking back at that, I mean, could things have gone differently? Very much so. But in the end, I mean, everyone was okay. And they took him back down to Vancouver, and they got him some help, or got him back to wherever he currently was. I mean, he came out, so where we live is about a half-hour drive from downtown Vancouver without traffic. And it's about a 45-minute bus ride. This guy came out with no vehicle. He had really no reason to be out here at all. He was associated with the people across the street. I don't know in what sense, but he did know them. They knew him. They just said they hadn't seen him in a long time. I still don't know what that's all about. But the dispatch, I think they made some real mistakes. And I was confident sort of in what they were delivering to me as a means of what I should be doing. They probably should have not asked me to hand this guy my phone, should not have coerced me to move outside, although they wouldn't be able to come inside because my front door was locked.
Right.
But either way, looking back, there's things that could have changed. But yeah, very lucky that things went down the way that they did, and it could have been a lot worse. But immediately you're looking at these 15 seconds of where I'm going from tearing up because I'm having a moment thinking about my lost dog to 4 seconds later getting a text message saying approved, and now I'm super happy. I know we're moving. That's very exciting. To all of a sudden, motherfucker walking in my house. Like that 15 seconds was an emotional eruption like I've never felt before in my life. And I sat back afterwards, after all this had sort of calmed down, and took a deep breath. And I just said, what the fuck was that? That was the universe just giving me a sign of something. I'm not 100% sure what yet, but there was some very pent up anxious energy beforehand. And after that, I mean, that was just an explosion. So yeah, I mean, at that point, I told my girlfriend, I said, I think it's probably time that we find another dog to adopt.
Well, that definitely paints a picture of the type of guy you are in stressful situations.
I've been training different martial arts for the last sort of 8 or 9 years. And part of what we train a lot of different Filipino martial arts as well. So we do a lot of Kali and Eskrima, which is training with canes and knives. And we put ourselves and test ourselves into different stressful situations, and we often test our mental strength. You were training jujitsu for a while. I don't know if you are as well. I still continue to train jujitsu, and those moments, that sort of training, when you're put under pressure and forced to think, forced to breathe slowly, I really contribute a lot of what happened and a lot of the success of that evening to the training that I had put myself through. And I called my martial arts instructor about a half hour after all this went down. And I just said, man, all that shit that we train, that we prepare for, and, in case something ever does happen, you're never going to believe this. So he told me, I guess you owe me a bunch more money, then I should probably charge more for my services.
Yeah, you definitely do learn that I did jujitsu, I did a bit of Muay Thai. I'm not doing it currently, but I could see how that would pay off. You have to be ready for those situations. It's like doing a fire drill. When the fire's on, you know what to do because you've been trained. So it's the same for life. And it gives you a lot of things that you can apply, and you applied those well, and you're still here to come on the podcast and tell the story. So that's amazing. So congrats for handling that.
There's a few things that we do train in a couple of, scenarios that, that we do say to ourselves. And one is, I would rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6, which is I would, in any sort of given situation when it comes down to it, I would rather be judged by 12 of my peers than carried in a coffin by 6 of my best friends. The other is, today is a good a day as any to die. And, at that point, if you get into really stressful situations and, you can come to accept that you're going to do what's absolutely needed and you're going to find clarity. Obviously, you don't want that to happen. But those two things were definitely things that were running through my head, and were able to allow me to keep calm and analyze the situation. But it was my girlfriend that put it in my head, that said, "Hey, I think he might be high." And at that point, I was fairly involved and kind of bought into this situation. Had she not have said that, I don't know that I would have started looking for cues or different parts of the conversation that would sort of lead to me believing that he was maybe not telling a true story. But in his mind, it was true. It was very true. And that scares the hell out of me. And, I think that mental health is a massive issue, and not enough people talk about it. And I think that, different levels of mental health are very real in society. And often you don't know who's walking around thinking what, or you don't understand how people on the bus or the subway or the coffee shop, how they're perceiving certain situations. And you might look at a situation, think one thing, and other people may have something else going on in their mind that you can't see. You can't see mental health. And this was a very, very clear case of that.
I saw the Joker last night, and that painted another massive picture of mental health. I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, but I recommend watching it. And yeah, you don't know what people are thinking. You got to be very careful.
I heard that movie was unreal.
Yeah, Joaquin Phoenix did an amazing job. It didn't quite tie to the real comic book Batman Joker story, but they did a good job of bringing a few things in, and I really enjoyed it.
I think there was a lot of hate on the movie from Marvel fans saying that, this was not true, to the Batman saga. This was something totally different. But I think that's kind of what the world needs, and I think that really adds to it. Again, I haven't seen it. I've read some reviews and seen some comments and stuff of what people have been saying about it. But I think I would love that movie, and I love just these darker versions of these characters, and it really gets you. It really allows you to kind of understand the character more and appreciate the overall sense in the next Batman movie that comes out. I mean, you look at Heath Ledger, Joaquin Phoenix. I don't know who else would be able to play the Joker better. I guess the original Joker was
Yeah, I can't think of his name.
incredible. He's in so many movies. The Shining. I don't know why the hell I can't remember his name. I freaking yeah, I think he's unbelievable. Anyways, I'm gonna get some hate on the podcast for not being able to remember his name at the top of my head, but
Cesar Romero and Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson. Yeah, big Jack Nicholson fan, clearly. Yeah,
Yeah.
but he did an unreal job, and I think he was the one that really set up the character for what it's become now. There's no doubt in my mind. Yeah, and he did an incredible job. As an actor, I think that would be such a fun role to play and really jump into and own a role like that.
Yeah. Well, let's take a left turn here. And obviously, this is construction related, but that's a fantastic story. I still can't believe that you had to go through that emotional roller coaster. But I know that you started as an entrepreneur at a very young age, which I'm sure has set the stage for you to go on to develop New Vision amongst the other things that you're a part of. So, what was it like in the early days for you when you started to realize that you wanted to become an entrepreneur?
You know, I didn't realize that I wanted to become an entrepreneur. In the early days, I didn't even really know what an entrepreneur was. I would just had natural tendencies for certain things. I mean, looking back from, way back when as a kid, I was, at the age of sort of 4 and 5 years old, started selling lemonade because other kids were selling lemonade. And I thought that that was pretty cool, or, iced tea, Kool-Aid, whatever. And then I started collecting cool rocks from the beach and wherever I would find them. And then I started selling those instead because, a cup of iced tea would go for 25 cents, but I could sell these rocks for anywhere from a quarter up to like $3 was the price point that I was putting on them for some of these, really, really cool rocks. And so, looking back at that, that was sort of one of the first experiences that I had. And then I did all the typical stuff that you hear when it was snowing, shoveling driveways as a kid. I had a paper route at the age of 8 or 9, where my parents would come out and walk around with me, and they were dedicated to helping me because I showed an interest in wanting to make money and wanting to work. So at the age of 14, I went around and I was applying for jobs because here in BC, the legal working age is 15. You're supposed to be 15 in the eyes of the government in order to actually work. So I went around at 14 applying for positions because it was getting close to my 15th birthday, and I thought that that was what I needed to do. So I was hired at McDonald's when I was 14, but I wasn't able to start working until I was 15, which was only a few weeks away. So about 2 or 3 days after my 15th birthday, I started my career at McDonald's. That lasted about 3 weeks before I was fired. I guess I just wasn't McDonald's team material. And so that was kind of tough, but I went from there to make a long outstanding career at Little Caesars Pizza as a delivery driver. And at that point too, I was also selling a little weed in high school, and I just sort of just got my license. And my first car I bought for $500 from a guy down the street. It was like a '79 Oldsmobile Cutlass,
Oh,
2 door, just like rusted out, gangster as shit. But it was, the ceiling, the cloth fabric from the ceiling was hanging down. So
yeah.
put some thumbtacks and put that back up, and drove around that. But I bought that thing for $500, and it was unbelievable. But delivering pizzas, I was getting paid, I think it was $3.25 per delivery plus tip. So I would be on call, and weeknights on a Tuesday or Wednesday night, I might get 2 to 3 calls for delivery, and I would make $6 or $9 plus tip. Driving around an Oldsmobile Cutlass cost me about $12 in gas just to get there, and so those numbers didn't make sense all of a sudden. But I was able to make a few little transactions on the side when I showed up to people's houses when they were ordering late night pizza. So that helped out, covered a little bit of gas money, but I never took that very far. I got out of that pretty quick. But from there, I mean, I was at a point now. I was at about 15. My parents split up, which was pretty difficult. I sort of understood what was going on. I have a younger sister. She's about a year and a half younger than I am. It was pretty hard for her, and so I knew that I needed to be there for her emotionally. My mom was a bit of a wreck there too, and as much as she was trying to console me, I felt that I was also really trying to console her, and also, recognize that my dad was probably going through some stuff as well. So it was a really awkward time at that point too. I had just been fired from McDonald's. I wasn't doing very well in school. When I was in high school, ADD was just becoming a big buzzword, and luckily there was a cure for that, where they would hand you a bunch of pills and say, "Hey, take this, at breakfast and after lunch, and you should be good." And so I realized, okay, well, my parents are splitting up. I'm failing in school. I'm being told that I have a learning disorder. There were counselors and teachers that wanted me to get extra help. So I went to Sylvan Learning after high school, because I was told that I needed extra time to learn. And with all of this kind of coming down, I got really depressed for a number of years. And I honestly didn't realize that until a couple of years ago, when I was doing some reflection. I just realized that what we were learning in high school was not engaging. And I was not learning in a way that was conducive to seeing any sort of results on my end of things. Still doing, entrepreneurial things. I started snowboarding a lot. I spent most of high school up on the mountain snowboarding, and I had a number of friends that were sponsored, and they would hook me up with free gear, jackets, pants, used decks, bindings, keychains, whatever. And I would do pop-up sales in the high school cafeteria at lunchtime. I'd throw up some flyers around the school, spread some word. Within, like, just in that morning, people would see it, and they would know that they were going to meet there. And all of a sudden, you get 6 or 7 people seeing you set up a table, and they see snowboards going up, they see keychains going down on the table, they see gear for sale. One little sign saying, it's all got to go. And people started swarming, and I did a few of those, and sold out of literally everything I had. People are buying things not because they needed it, but because everybody else was buying stuff, and it just became a feeding frenzy. And at that point, that was a big sign as to probably what was going to become. And it was a real insight into how people were reacting to certain situations, and just getting a real insight for human behavior. And so that was pretty interesting.
And then at what point did you get involved in construction from there?
So I was 17 when I graduated high school. I'm a December baby. So from there, I graduated high school. My mom had the house that she was living in ended up catching fire. The tenant that was living downstairs, she was a bit of a crackhead, and the landlord had a difficult time getting her out. My mom was renting the place upstairs, and this woman had fallen asleep, burning candles, and set the house on fire. And so my mom had to move out of her house that she was living in. And the new house that she rented was owned by a man. His name is Randy, and he was a recruiter for PCL Construction.
Oh, wow.
So at that point, I met him as a young 17-year-old, just about to turn 18. And he said, "Well, we need young guys on the job site. What do you think about coming out and laboring for us?" So I said, "Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, I'm going to get paid whatever. It was like $13 an hour, something like that." And I went out, and my first experience on a commercial construction site was we were building a Canadian Tire and a Best Buy downtown Vancouver. And I remember showing up not knowing what to do. I had a brand new pouch and a hammer, and that was pretty well it. Little did I know, for those first few months, that pouch and that hammer would stay hung up in the lunch trailer.
Yeah.
And like my tool was a broom and a squeegee. I was the guy that was going to be squeegeeing water off of concrete slabs so the carpenters could come by and lay out their walls. And I needed to keep that dry. And in Vancouver, as you know, it rains a hell of a lot. So
Yep.
it was a constant battle of setting up sump pumps and just squeegeeing water, cleaning up garbage. But did that for about I did that for about 3 or 4 months before then. You know what, we'd really like to throw you into our apprentice, something that you would be interested in doing. And I said, absolutely. I mean, I was always a very hard worker, and they started to recognize that. And I wanted to do a good job, and this was kind of coming off a point where I was still kind of depressed about my current situation, and I had a lack of confidence. So I felt all I could do was put my head down and work really hard, and hopefully somebody would recognize that and kind of keep to myself. And so that was sort of where it started. Past that, I just continued working hard. I continued developing more skills. I was then, they sent me to school for my apprenticeship. They sponsored me. I went on to working at a number of different projects. They had moved me up to a lead hand position. They threw me into first aid courses. So at this point, I was now down working at the convention center, and I was the initial first aid guy on site of about 900 guys. There's about 900 people working down there at sort of the peak of construction that we were trying to get when we were trying to get this thing built. I started surveying. They got me into surveying and doing layout and working with the total station, and provided me training with that. And I was developing a really exceptional career for myself with this company. And I was getting moved up, and I was really developing confidence. And then it became clear, okay, well, I'm quite good when I put my mind to things, but there was some time there sort of between 14, 15 to sort of 18, 19, where I didn't have that kind of confidence, and I lost a huge sense of myself. And those years in construction, gave me a sense of earning. I was able to make money, and these people, they saw much more in me than I saw in myself. So at this point, what I was learning, they sent me to school at BCIT for courses towards my construction management degree, and they were investing a lot of time and money into me. Then what happened is in 2010, when the Olympics came, construction in Vancouver shut down for about three weeks, and there was just nothing on. And so everyone was laid off, and I spent some time up in Whistler and up in one of the local mountains here, getting involved with the Olympic activities, and just kind of partied and had a great time. And it was a great experience for Vancouver, and it was a great experience to live in Vancouver at that point. And then it came time to go back to work. They didn't really have any projects that I was particularly interested in. And there was a part of me that knew that if I went back to work, then that was going to be the path that was laid out for me. And there was a part of me that knew that it was time for me to jump out into something new and start developing myself again, and pick up the pieces that I had that were kind of shattered when I was younger, and develop myself further into the person that I could be. And I now had the confidence to do so. And I felt that I had a skill set that was going to allow me to really move forward in a successful way. I had no idea what was going to come, but I knew that I was ready for whatever was going to be thrown at me. That being said, before I had left, so I was working with them until I was 23, I believe. So I was able to make some money, enough money that at the age of 22, I was able to buy my first place. I bought a townhouse. I had contributed, saved a lot of money, put that into RSPs. And at that time, the company that I was working for would contribute up to 3% of whatever you contributed to RSPs. So I was putting 10% of my paycheck away. I was reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and thought that, okay, well, I'm going to start just shoveling automatically 10% into RSPs. They're matching, actually it was 3.5%. So I was putting away 13.5% of everything that I was making. And at 22, I had enough money for a down payment for a small shitty townhouse. So I jumped on that. And then at 23, I was looking at leaving PCL, but before I did that, I wanted to purchase another place. I didn't quite have enough money for a down payment, but what I ended up doing was I went around to different condo buildings and ended up finding a condo building that there was a number of units that were owned by one person. And so we came to an agreement, and I said, look, like on paper, what we're going to do is we're going to assess it at a higher value. So basically, you're going to write me a check for a quote unquote renovation credit, and we're going to make this property of yours on paper sell for higher. It was about $10,000 higher. We negotiated in person. We were going to pay, it's like $190,000 for this like shitty old condo. But on paper, we were gonna sell it and say that it was sold for $200,000, but he was gonna refund me a $10,000 renovation credit at the time of the sale. So what I did was, I mean, that was at that point we were able to put 5% down on this place, and so I established a line of credit, took a $10,000 line of credit, put that down, and then when the transaction of the home went through, was then given a $10,000 check, which put back to write this off a line of credit. And I went through this. I did this process with a good friend of mine as well, because I didn't want to take on the burden, but I wanted to take on another place. And so I did that about 4 months before I left PCL, because I knew that jumping into working on myself, I was not going to be able to get a mortgage. Nobody would even look at me. So at this point, I jumped into working for myself at 23, and I had 2 mortgages that I needed to pay for. I had about $8,000 in my bank account, and the way that I justified things was, well, I have about 6 months worth of money that I can spend. I figured I can probably get by on about $25 or $30 a week for food and rent. I think I was paying about $900 a month. I was actually living at this time with a friend of mine. Well, Danny, my current business partner, him and I were living together, and we got a place. We started living together. I think I was 19 when we moved in together. Anyways, we were living together, and him and I had always talked about potentially working together. And he had started a company with his brother-in-law, and I was working with PCL, and we just never had, we talked about, how we would work together. I knew that he was a really ambitious guy. I was clearly ambitious myself, but there was never a time where we had an opportunity to work together. And then I left PCL and I started working for myself. And about 6 months into that, he called me back up, and he had said, look, things aren't working out all that well with my brother-in-law. If I was to cut ties with him, would you consider, partnering up and working together? And I said, in a heartbeat. And the thing about Danny is he's, you know him as well.
Yep.
He's an incredible guy. The amount of knowledge that he absorbs. We used to sit there and I would watch him tear apart, the full engine of his car, take it out, put it back together in a new body of a car. He used to work up at a mine when he was younger, and he basically took care of all of the mining equipment. And it was a pumice mine, I believe, that he was working at up in Pemberton. And so he was at, again, a young age. I think he was probably 18, 19, 20. And he was up there working in the mine with his dad. And anytime there was issues with the machines, he would be the one that was going to be fixing them. And just as far as, being mechanically inclined, this guy, I just looked up to him so much, and he was capable of doing things that I had no idea how to do. And I really looked up to that. And he's 2.5 years, 3 years older than I am. So he was a couple of grades above. But in our town where we grew up, there's only one high school. So everybody kind of knew everybody, right? So it's, everybody from 5 years older to 5 years younger to, older brothers, younger sisters, whatever, right? Everybody kind of knew everyone. Anyways, I just said, yeah, in a heartbeat. So we sat down at his place. He was he was renting a room at a friend's place. He had just gotten back from doing some traveling, and he was staying at a room in a friend's house who lives in our town. And we sat down. I went to his place, and we just said, all right, like, how much money do you have? How much money do I have? All right, how many leads do you have? Do you have any clients that can continue working with, or do you have any contacts that might be able to get us some work? What do we want this company to look like? Where do we want this to go? Like, what the fuck are we going to call ourselves?
Yeah.
all that really, really exciting stuff that happens when you're starting a company and kind of going through that phase. But yeah, the way that I looked at it was, when I made the decision to leave PCL and start working for myself, was I have just enough money to support me for about 6 months if I don't make a penny. And that was not a great 6 months. It was not going to be, I'm going to be out and, partying with friends. It was not going to be, I'm out going to be, driving around, going snowboarding, going on vacation. This was, I can literally survive. And that was good enough for me. And I knew that I was the type of person that I was willing to do whatever it needed to be done, and in order to become successful and make things work. So jumped into that. And funny enough, one of our first years in business, it wasn't our first years in business, it was our first year. I think we were probably six months into business, and the way that we were paying ourselves, because we didn't have enough work coming in to pay ourselves a salary. So we would finish jobs, those jobs would get completed, we would sit down on the floor and go through, okay, this was how much was made, this was how much we paid to subcontractors, here's all the invoice receipts, okay, there's a few bucks left, all right, we're going to write a check 50-50, and this is how much money we made. And then we were able to sometimes pay ourselves and sometimes not. And if one guy was really, really hard off, I would say, all right, you need to take $200, take $200. And, he would say the same thing to me, and we would just, be able to take a little bit of money here and there, but trying not to take much because we wanted to leave everything that we could in the company. And I remember it was about 6 months in, and we hadn't closed out on projects. We'd paid our trades, but we hadn't been paid. We just sort of collected money on the back end of things. And we were in line at Quiznos for lunch one day, and we went through, and I went to pay for my sandwich, and I was declined because I didn't have enough money to pay for my sandwich. And I mean, that was the point for me. And I looked at Danny, and I just said, this is never gonna fucking happen again. And I just said, and can I also borrow $9? Because already made my sandwich for me. So, that was a real turning point, and I'll never ever forget that day. And from there, we picked up on some projects. We got very, very serious, and started growing the company from there. Our first years in business, I mean, we didn't have money for marketing, so we started thinking, how the hell are we going to get our name out there? And one of our good friends, she was an interior designer here in town, and she had started her business about 6 months prior to us starting our business, and we had been friends. I was good friends with her younger brother for quite a while, and he was a good friend of mine that tragically ended up dying in a car accident when we were in the 10th grade. But I had kept in contact with her, and we were sitting there talking, and we had said, well, let's do something here. And what we came up with was, let's do some sort of charity fundraiser for the Delta Hospital. So what we ended up doing is going around town. They did the design. We went around town, got a whole bunch of sponsors. material sponsors. We went to the lumber yard. We had a roofing sponsor that came on, window sponsor, flooring sponsor, paint sponsor. And we built evenings and weekends a 2-story playhouse. It looked like a little barn. We put it on a trailer. We built it on a trailer. And then we towed that thing around for about 6 months, doing farmers markets, whatever we could on social media here and there. And we got some newspaper publicity, and everybody around town saw it, and we raffled it off at about $5 a ticket. And we raised, over the course of 6 months, I think it was close to about $20,000 for the Delta Hospital,
Wow.
which was $20,000 was our goal, because I think past $20,000 there was some more hoops that you had to jump through with I think it was the BC Lottery Corporation. I don't exactly remember, but I know that $20,000 was our target. We came very, very close to that. But what that did was it got us a lot of publicity as well, and for a good cause, because at that time we had time, but we did not have money for any sort of marketing. So we ended up doing that, and that started drumming up some business, and we started getting our name around town, and slowly and organically, we really started making a name for ourselves around here. And then fast forward a number of years since 2011. We started 2010, and in 2011, after we built this playhouse, we were voted in one of the local newspapers here as best renovator. And since pretty well every year since 2011 within our community, within one newspaper or another, there was 2 of them that were around. One's not around anymore, but between the 2 of them, we've been voted best renovator. We've taken down a number of awards for our projects on municipal and provincial levels. We've won a few Ovation Awards and Georgie Awards, which are sort of the some of the more prestigious awards, I guess, are around here.
Yep.
That was incredible. We were also asked to do a couple of television shows. The way that worked out was, it's funny. I think that connection and networking is a huge part of business. And I used to play poker with a good friend of mine, and one of the guys that used to come and play poker as well, he worked for a television production company. And I didn't know him all that well, but we played cards together and drank some beers and whatever, and that was fun. But he knew that we were building our business, and he had an opportunity come up. He was producing a show called Game of Homes, or he was working as a producer on a show called Game of Homes here in Vancouver. So this was the first season, and they had 4 contractors on the show, and one wasn't working out very well. So he called me up and he said, "Yeah, you know what? We need a guy down here. Would you be interested in coming out and being a part of this show? We need somebody. We're going to be firing this guy." And at this point, Danny and I were setting up a booth for the home show. It's BC Home and Garden Show. And when I got this phone call, and we just sort of sat there and said, "Well, can we do this? Can we make this work? How are we going to do this? The projects that you're going to be managing, I mean, I'm not going to be able to be involved in the business for, well over a month." And so we sat down, we figured out how we were going to make it work. 2 days later, I was on set, on camera, shooting this episode of Game of Homes. And that was a whirlwind. And then from there, the producer went on to produce another show called Worst to First. And they needed another contractor to come in and do some of the work and take on doing some of the renovations. And so we got involved with that for the last 2 seasons. Season 1 was very successful. Season 2 was even more successful. And so that went really well. That was able to get us some publicity. And
what's been your experience on those shows? Because when I was talking to, and this is a touchy subject, I was talking to Manny from Hardcore Renos right before we got on the call, and he's got a very negative opinion of the renovation HGTV home shows. And I want to hear, I was involved on a job with you.
Yes.
And I didn't get to see the behind the scenes stuff. We did some electrical work, but I want to know what it's really like from your perspective being involved on those shows, because there's two schools of thought. You got the school of thought with people like Manny, and to some degree myself, I believe this, where you've got a guy like Mike Holmes that's coming in and telling everybody that contractors suck and they're ruining your house and look at all this damage they cause, and they paint a negative picture. And then on the other hand, you see a company like yourself that's been involved, has been able to help grow their business and had a very positive experience. So what's been your experience with those shows from the site standpoint of a contractor working on the show? What do you think about them?
Well, that's treading on some dangerous water, because there was been NDAs signed, and I can't
Fair
really say
enough.
too much about it without giving too much away. But I mean, we're taking homes, we're renovating them with tight timelines, timelines that generally, aren't going to happen necessarily in real life, but that is made clear on these shows. And it's, one thing that I have noticed. I mean, the renovations that we are doing, because of the tight timelines, are difficult. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of people involved. The homeowners that sign on for these shows to get their houses renovated, there's a huge team of people that make sure that these people have a great experience. And it's important to the network that the homeowners have a great experience, and they come back and they really really like their homes. And all I can say is the people that I've worked with behind the scenes all care a huge amount about doing an excellent job in whatever their role may be, whether it's operating camera, operating sound, whether it's the hosts of the shows who are very very dedicated. And ultimately we're able to produce shows that inspire people to do a lot of these renovations, and gives them some great ideas and entertains them. And the timelines are very tight. It is stressful. We're dealing with a number of different sponsors, but in the end, we want to be able to provide the homeowners with exactly what they see on TV and give them that experience. So, that being said, there is an aspect to it. There are certain home renovation shows that I do not like based on the theory or based on the premise of the show. And there are shows, one is Catch a Contractor. And I think that was the name of it. And what that does is it gives people a perspective that contractors are bad.
Yeah.
And we as a company have spent a huge amount of time trying to overcome that stigma of the quote unquote contractor. And so people go in, and there are shows where you come in and you hear these nightmares. You see Mike Holmes, and he walks in and he says, yeah, like the last contractor did this, that was bad, look what this guy done, he should have never done it this way, and your house is leaking, and this was installed incorrectly. And that gives people, in my opinion, a sense of there are more bad contractors out there than there are good. And in my personal opinion, because I generally tend to try and see the best in people, I think that there certainly are a lot of shady contractors that are out there that are only in it for themselves and for no other reason. But I do feel that generally there are a lot of contractors that get into a project with the best of intentions. However, somewhere along the line they've realized, okay, well, they don't know how to run a business properly.
Right.
And they might be an excellent carpenter, but when it comes to running a business or understanding financials or customer service or proper management techniques, they really lack that, and they get themselves into trouble. And I don't think that a lot of those relationships start out that way, but some of them end up going fairly poorly. But I would say the majority of the contractors that I know, they are top-notch professional people.
Yeah.
And I spend a huge amount of time educating people as well, whether it's consultations or I'm putting out a webinar that's coming out pretty quickly. And I've spent a lot of time putting that together as well. which is strictly educational pieces for the public so that they are given excellent information. So when they go to choose a contractor or choose an electrician or choose a plumber, there are tangible tools that they can use and questions that they need to ask themselves. Certain map, which I won't get into too much detail now, but it's basically a map towards finding the right contractor for you and how to interview properly, questions that you should be asking, so that when you make your final decision on who you're going to hire, you're going to go through and with extreme confidence. And if you follow those procedures, you're going to have an excellent experience. And some of these home renovation shows about these terrible contractors that have come in and ruined their lives and cost them a lot of money, those experiences are not going to happen. But I think as an industry in a whole, we do need to do a better job when it comes to weeding a lot of those people out. And where that's going to start is with education,
Yeah.
to the homeowners, and providing them with information so that they can see through some of the bullshit that people are going to might approach them with. And so there needs to be, in my opinion, better standards set that are very, very clear and very defined. One of which, when we're building houses, we have to have a builder's license. There's certain things we have to establish a third party warranty. We have to keep up a certain amount of what are called continued professional development credits, so CPD credits, which is taking different courses throughout the year so that you stay educated, and each course is worth 2 points, 6 points, 8 points, 15 points, whatever. But the point is that you have to go through a certain level of education every year in order to maintain your builder's license. But I think that same thing needs to happen for home renovations and for other trades industries as well, because the industry that we work in moves very, very quickly. We're coming out with new techniques all the time, new products, new services, new ways of thinking, new ways of doing things better. And there's not enough time spent, because as you're running a business, you're thinking, okay, well, when it comes to priorities, all right, I need to get payroll done, or I need to do some training with my team, or whatever that is. But when it comes down to the educational pieces of understanding the industry that you're working in, there's not a lot of time that's spent on having an understanding of where the industry is going as a whole. So staying on the front of that ship is really important if you're going to continue working in the industry. Otherwise, you're going to start becoming irrelevant, and you're going to be starting to perform outdated building techniques, outdated installation techniques, and you're not going to be able to offer clients the same level of experience or the same level of quality that they should be delivered.
How do you feel about choosing your clients? Because I think that it also, sometimes you can't necessarily blame the contractor for a bad experience. I think a lot of times you can also blame, I guess it is sometimes the contractor, but the contractor for choosing a client that doesn't fit well with their style. And let's say if you offer a specific service or product.
Okay, so I'm gonna look at this from two points of view. From a contractor's perspective, if you're looking to get value, it all comes down to lead generation, right? So if you and your marketing machine. So if you are marketing, if you have a huge number of leads coming in, then you're going to be able to turn away a lot of projects and work with the clients that are going to be really, really aligned with your values, which is what we try and do. Because we don't want to get into a situation where we're taking on work just for the sake of taking on work and
Right.
staying busy and making poor decisions with working with a partner, being the client, that is going to put us in a position where now we have to make decisions on more of a financial basis versus some decisions that might be made in the best interest of the client. We don't want to do that. But I think what that comes down to as well is certainly we've had issues with clients in the past where we've literally done everything that we can, and in the grand scheme of things, just not everybody is going to be happy, and that's the way life goes. That's
That's
reality.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to, I think where a lot of the issues is when it is the contractors that are working with the homeowners are not setting expectations for their clients themselves, right? Or they're setting expectations that are too high
Right.
and they can't deliver.
Right.
So having these conversations with people up front and really understanding who you're going to be working with is a massive part of the process. So we broke our process down into two stages. One is sort of a pre-construction stage, and then the second phase is going to be the construction phase. In that initial phase, it is very much about it. We're establishing an initial budget. We have a number of touch points with our clients. We're getting to know them without actually signing into a full contract at this point. Once that relationship has been established and we realize, okay, this client is going to be great for us to work with, and the client has decided that this company is going to be excellent for us to work with, then we can move forward into construction. But I think a lot of that, a lot of the poor experiences that contractors are having with clients comes from two things: either not setting expectations about what you need from the client and educating them properly as to the reality of construction, or they're setting expectations that are way too high in order to sell the job.
Right.
And they get themselves into a hole that they can't get out of. If you're saying, okay, this project is going to get done in 4 months, in the back of your mind, you know that it's probably going to take 6. Tell the client it's going to take 6 or 7, because if clients hear that a project is going to take 4 months, and even if you tell them a little bit, yeah, it might be a little bit over 4 months, but probably right around there, that 4-month mark is all they hear in their head, because in their mind, they're planning on, okay, how long do I have to rent a house for? How long do I have to store furniture for? All of these things are predicated on what you tell them. And if you can't meet those expectations, then they're going to get really disappointed. And same with when it comes to scheduling. In renovations, schedules change so that your clients need to have a really, like, either a week to week or day to day schedule as far as what is going to be going on, because we as general contractors, our projects sort of take anywhere in generally from kind of 4 to 8 months working with clients when we're doing renovations. This does not include the land development and the home building that we're doing up in the Okanagan. But generally, when we're facing with renovations, I would say about 80% of our projects land within that timeline. So being very real with your clients is absolutely huge. And we've built what we call a client expectation. Client expectations for the absolute best results is what we call it. And it highlights a lot of gray areas and questions that come up. And we provide that to our clients, and we make them sign that before jumping into a project. That is aside from the contract itself. And it sets expectations for the clients, what we need from them, what they're agreeing to do to make sure that they have the absolute best experience throughout this project as well. So I think that works both ways. But yeah, I mean, in the end, the reality is you're not going to be able to keep everybody happy. You do your best to control what you can. Renovations, building homes have a huge number of variables. And up front, if you can eliminate as many of those variables as possible, you're going to be off to a really, really good start.
Do you guys charge for that pre-construction process where you're initially setting expectations and building budgets, or is that a free consultation?
No, we do charge for it. So the way that we work, we didn't start charging for estimates until about 4 years ago now. And because nobody around here was doing that, right? Everybody was offering free estimates, and this was just sort of the norm. And so we felt, well, if we start charging for estimates, that's going to drive away a lot of work. And in fact, it never has. And when explaining that process and what's involved in the process, people really understand that. So generally, our process will be, we will go to a home for a consultation. We will provide a quick and sort of initial budget and some thoughts. And then if they want to move forward into establishing a budget, we charge them $2,500. And then what that does is it allows us the time that we need. It respects our time and puts value on our process. And throughout that, we can then start establishing a detailed scope of work. And we'll bring subcontractors through. We'll do a full inspection and assessment on the renovated areas, and really be able to eliminate a lot of those variables and questions that might come up throughout the renovation. Whereas, if we're providing things for free, we're spending a huge amount of time, and that care is not put into that process as much as it should. And once we started, and we were one of the first people to around here to start charging for our quote unquote estimates, the feedback that we've gotten has been excellent. And I don't think that we've lost a single job. Well, maybe we have, I don't know, but I don't think we've lost very much work at all because of the fact that we started charging for estimates. And I don't even like to say that we charge for estimates. I say that we charge for our pre-construction process. And here's why. Here's what's involved.
What percentage of your leads that come in do you think turn into successful client relationships that go through with the pre-com process? Because I know from experience that it depends on your marketing, but it can be in the beginnings. When you start posting ads, you get a lot of calls, and you have that initial tendency to say, hey, look, the phone's ringing. Let's go take all this work. We got guys. We need to keep it going. What percentage do you think is your success ratio from your marketing?
About 33%.
That's good. That's high.
So last year, our conversion rate, my thoughts were, okay, well, our sales process went from, all right, we're going to sign clients into these $200, $300, $500, $600,000 renovation contracts to we need to assign them into these $2,500 commitments and establish relationships with them. So that was what we had started to do. And last year, our conversion rate from people that signed on to our pre-construction process to people that moved into our construction process and signed construction contracts, our conversion rate there was 100%.
Wow.
And the year before, it was about I think it was 95%. We've had one project, I think, back out after they've signed on with an initial budget and handed us a small deposit to go through this process. We've only ever had to date one job back out. Now, when I projected our budget for this year, I assumed that may not happen. And I figured that it was going to be with the amount of leads that we were expecting to come in based on our marketing campaign, I figured that we were probably convert about 83% of those. So still very, very high conversion rate once that initial relationship has been established.
And what are you guys doing for the majority of your marketing now? You started off with this free campaign that got you a lot of publicity, but now that you're actually profiting and your business is structured and you have a machine, what have you found to be the top 1 to 2 marketing tactics that seem to work best for your company? Is it referrals?
So for us, our number one is referrals from networking, right? So referrals from different designers, different architects, engineers, who are also bringing in clients that are looking for contractors, and they will say, hey, these guys have hired us to do these drawings. They need a contractor. Can you go speak with them? That has been our number one. Number two has been home shows. They've been really successful for us. So we only do a couple a year, but that gets you, your product, your service in front of a huge amount of people. And it allows you to build relationships and meet people face to face in a very short amount of time. A lot of people in a very short amount of time. Those have been quite successful because you can also pre-qualify people right there on site. And at that point, you can decide, okay, well, are we going to set up a consultation with them, or are we going to refer them to somebody else? But there's a huge amount of conversation that happens and relationships that are built there. And then we do a bit of advertising on House, which was last year was our third biggest lead generation source. And then we do we do a bit of Google AdWords. We don't spend a huge amount of money on that by any means. I don't think we're spending any money on Google AdWords at this point. We spend a bit of money on SEO. That helps a little bit here and there. But yeah, some of the best success we've had is I've gotten out, met people, played poker, and had a couple of beers with one of the producers of this television show.
Yeah.
And he's since become a really good friend. But networking for sure is a huge part, developing relationships. And I do quite well with people one-on-one versus in big groups. I like to think of myself as an extrovert, but I still don't know if that's really the case, because
You
I
can turn it on.
I can turn it on, but I'm very much an introvert and have introverted tendencies. But in small groups, I can do really well. So if I can take you out for lunch or come to your office, bring you coffee to your office, sit down and tell you why we're going to be working together, chances are we're probably going to be working together.
Is that a skill that you've developed and learned over time? Because I feel that I'm the same way. I can turn on my extroverted side, but I'm generally an introvert.
Yeah. If I meet somebody fairly casually, that relationship happens very organically and very easily. For me to scroll through and cold call is kind of difficult, because I've been really successful at selling projects for New Vision projects, because I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm trying to provide value and really educate people along the way, and they find that there's a lot of trust that's built there, and people understand that I have the best intentions in mind and that I mean what I say. And when I'm getting on the phone cold calling people and saying, hey, yeah, we're a general contracting company, we should get together, and you're gonna like what we do and this and that. I mean, I find that kind of awkward, because I feel like I'm trying to sell something, and it's not my natural ability to really sell things. It was, hey, when I was selling snowboard gear at these pop-up sales in high school, it was, here, you're gonna have, I have this gear, I want you to be a part of this. You're gonna sell it to you for a very discounted rate, and here's why all this gear is going to be great, and it's going to help you snowboard better and feel better, and this is going to keep you warm. And you're selling naturally without having to really sell anything. And that's why I think that providing a huge amount of value for people without expecting anything in return is huge. And I don't think that there's enough people that are out there doing that. You see so many Facebook and Instagram ads that are saying, hey, you want this built, call us. And there's a tactic to that as well. But I mean, I'm spending a huge amount of time on this webinar where there's no ask. It's very much, come on, we're going to get educated. You don't have to be here where we're based. You could be in Toronto where you're based, get online, but you're going to get that same information. But we're not going to come to Toronto and, build you a house because you can't afford to pay for our flights and our board, but you're going to be educated enough that you can hire somebody with the tools that we're going to provide you to do that. So we just want to be able to provide value there. And I think that people see that as being very real.
Yeah, for sure. We're coming up on time here and we got to wrap it up. But I know that you're involved in a ton of other stuff, and I'm going to link to the webinar for you in the show notes. So is that something that's going to be recorded that people can actually re-listen to, or how is that going to look?
Yeah, no, it's going to be recorded. I'm hoping to launch it within the next sort of 3 weeks. So I will get you those. If you want to throw those up in the show notes, great. I think it's going to be quite educational. So there will be, if you don't want to get involved in the webinar necessarily, there will be content that we can just email you. And if you have questions or anything, you can certainly reach out personally, and I can help kind of walk you through that process. But it should, we're going to have a couple of interview forms that are going to have questions for contractors that you can get, how you can actually rate contractors if you are interviewing for them, and how you're going to be able to align who you're going to choose with what you need from those contractors, as well as some really, really helpful hints along the way that are going to help your project or your next project become really successful.
That's great. Yeah. So definitely going to link to all that. I want to approach the wrap up here because I know you got to go. And I typically wrap up my podcast with a few quick answer rapid fire questions. And I'm going to keep it relatively short here. I want to know what the top 1 to 3 books that you recommend the most, or that you have read that had the most impact on your life.
Right. One was the E-Myth. Two, actually, we're gonna go through a few books here. My favorite books that are kind of rotating on my shelf were the E-Myth, Traction by Gino Wickman. There was 4 Hour Work Week, the E-Myth, and the next one I'm going to be Five Dysfunctions of a Team.
Yeah, that's a great one.
That was a massive one. Tribes, anything by Seth Godin is excellent. I think that those five are probably really, really key books.
Do you reread them at all, or do you just read them once and kind of make notes, or what's your process?
I do. I mean, the 4 Hour Work Week, I don't really read anymore because that was a book that got me inspired into how to really systemize a company. And I thought that that was great. However, the reality is my industry is not that simple.
Yeah, that's the exact same experience I had after reading that for sure.
But if you're looking to get into that, I think that that's a great one. But certainly the E-Myth, Traction is excellent, and anything if you can get your hands on anything by Keith Cunningham, The Road Less Stupid is going to be excellent.
Do you have any quotes that you live your life by or that you repeat to yourself most often?
Yeah, so there are a couple. There's one that it was Maya Angelou that actually really resonated with me and has for a long time. And I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And for me, that was something that really resonated with me when it comes to dealing with our team. And hard work is an excellent replacement for talent.
And you mentioned the 6-12 rule in MMA that you learned as well. That was a good one. Can you repeat that one?
I would rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. And today is as good a day as any to die.
I feel like that's a quote in a movie.
It very well could be. I'm sure
Okay,
it is.
it could have been stolen. Who knows? Last thing, do you meditate at all?
I've tried. I have phases where I go through meditation periods because it's been recommended to me, several times. I've tried priming. Tony Robbins talks a lot about priming in his morning routine. For me, meditation, I think that there's a lot of emphasis put on meditation. I think that if people are really going to be able to commit to that and make that genuinely a part of their life, then I think that that's incredible for them. For me, it's more of a tactic that I will use every once in a while, but it's not something that I feel that I'm going to find a huge benefit from because I don't commit myself to that enough. I was committing myself to cold plunges and cold showers every morning. I did that for, I don't know, it was about 40 days straight, and every once in a while I'll still do that too, but that's been incredible. I really like that. It just gets that blood flowing, gets that going. But what I did start doing quite a number of years ago was journaling and setting goals for myself in the mornings, and then reviewing them in the evenings. And it was a very simple format. It takes 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes in the evening, and it just highlights no more than 3 business goals that you can set for yourself for that day. It can be 1, it can be 2, it can be 3, but no more than that. And personal goals, no more than 3 personal goals that you can hit during the day, and set goals that are realistic that you're going to hit. And then I try and knock all those off first thing in the morning so that I know that I've hit those goals. And then there's a small amount of reflection time about how you're currently feeling and why that is. And then again at night, how you're currently feeling and why you think you're currently feeling that way.
Yeah.
And I just love hitting goals, man. So I like setting goals. I like hitting them, like checking them off boxes, man.
Love it. Love it. Anything else you want to say to the contractors or the industry out there to ponder as we sign off?
I'm big on educating people. I work with a young entrepreneurship organization, and I think that and what that does is it works with a group of high school students throughout the course of the year, or multiple groups of high school students throughout the course of the year, where they are developing their own businesses. And at the end of the year, they pitch to a series of judges in a Shark Tank like scenario. And so mentoring them throughout that process really, really helps. And I think if you have something to say it. And I can't encourage people enough to get involved in the industry in other aspects. of the industry that they love so much. So for me, I really enjoy educating people, getting involved with students. I love business startups. We didn't even touch base. We could chat for another couple hours on other aspects.
We'll do this again for sure.
Yeah, but I think that is some really, really key things, because if you're gonna be serious about getting involved in your business, in other ways than that people see, and stay committed. But man, like I say, myself, I was not, I would not consider myself to be talented. I know that I'm never going to be a great singer, and there's a lot of things that don't come natural to me. But when I'm working really hard, I find ways of working smarter, and I'm surrounding myself with people that are better at things than I am. And by osmosis, I'm becoming smarter and smarter and smarter. And that's something that I've learned from a really, really young age. And I would say, just very much be open, be humble, be kind. And, if you don't know something, don't pretend like you do.
Where can people find New Vision, get in touch with you, ask you guys questions? Where's the webinar going to be located? Give us kind of the quick tour of where people can get a hold of you.
Yeah, so you can find us on Instagram at New Vision Projects. Same with Facebook, facebook.com/New Vision Projects. Can email me directly, bsmith at New Vision Projects. That's B as in Brandon, Smith as in Smith, at NEW Vision Projects, plural with an S.com. They can find us at newvisionprojects.com. And those are probably are the key areas that you're going to find us. You can follow me on Twitter if you want to. I don't send out a lot of tweets, but I'm getting better and better at that.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
I think there's a great piece there. But yeah, absolutely, man. Those are the key platforms that we're on. The webinar, I'll send you those notes, and we can get those out to people too, to check them out.
Great. Well, Brandon, thanks so much for coming on, man. There's way too much that we didn't get to that I'm sure we'll have a part 2, maybe even a part 3, and try and get Danny on here. But thanks so much for doing this and sharing your story and everything that you are doing for the industry. And I appreciate it. And thank you so much.
100%, man. Anytime. I'd love to come back and chat with you.
Sounds good. All right. Take care.
Yeah, you too. Cheers.
Bye.
That's a wrap. That's a wrap, everybody.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Tools of the Trade podcast. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave us a 5-star review. For show notes, blog posts, resources, and access to our newsletter, check out toolspodcast.com.